A very good afternoon, all. A warm welcome from St. Joseph's College, Arts and Science, Kovur, Chennai. St. Joseph's College is a co-educational institution run by Sisters of DMI. We offer 13 UG courses and 4 PG courses. On behalf of St. Joseph's Academy, I'm Sushmi Elias, Assistant Professor, Department of English, welcome you all for this one-week faculty development program on research methodology and pedagogy of writing research papers. Let us start the session with a prayer. So I invite Sister Rexlin from the Department of Mathematics.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that might afford the students, staff, and faculty of St. Joseph College, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Sister. With the blessings and the wishes from our eminent principal, Dr. R. Rupen, and our enthusiastic administrator, Reverend Sister A. Malachoti, let us proceed with the session. Now, it's time to welcome you all for this Day 2 FTP. I invite Ms. D. Tamilisai, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, to give the welcome address.
A warm greetings to everyone present here. It is indeed a great pleasure to be amidst this one-week FTP gathering. On behalf of St. Joseph College, Arts and Science, Kovur, Chennai, I proudly welcome you all for the second day FTP on research methodology and pedagogy of writing research papers. A woman with great vision and mission, an icon for artwork, she is our chief guest, Dr. N. Tilakavati, Assistant Professor, Department of BCom, Bank Management, Dwaraga Das, Govardhan Das, Vaishnav College, Arambagam. I welcome you, ma'am. I warmly welcome our Administrator, Reverend Sister A. Malachoti, and our respected Principal, Dr. R. Rupan, for the second day FDP. Happy to welcome our convener, Mrs. S. Rajeshwari, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, and co-convener, Mrs. I. Pravina, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, who has been the backbone of this program. I extend my welcome to all faculty members, volunteers, participants, research scholars, and lab technicians who are all gathered here to add radiance to occasion. Once again, I welcome you all for this second day FDP. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I invite Mrs. I. Pravina, Assistant Professor, PG Department of Commerce, to welcome our Day 2 resource person, Dr. N. Tilakavati.
Good afternoon, everyone present here. I feel immense pleasure in the resource person for Day 2 for FDP, Dr. N. Tilakavati, Assistant Professor, PG Vaishnava College, Arambagam. He is highly qualified with MCom, MBA HR, MPhil, and PhD. Her experience in the field of teaching, 2 years and 6 months. She has presented and published papers in various disciplines like marketing, finance, HRM, and 2 of which published in Scopus. It's worth mentioning here. I'm indeed happy to have such an eminent resource person who accepted our invite to share her knowledge with us on the topic sampling methods in qualitative and quantitative research. I once again welcome you, ma'am.
Yes, let us all indulge in today's topic. Ma'am?
Yeah, I just started it.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, one and all. It's a great privilege to handle this session. First of all, I would like to thank uh, Malar Choti ma'am, administrator, and the principal, Dr. R. Ruben sir, and Rajeshwari ma'am, convener, and co-convener, Mrs. Praveena. And thank you for this opportunity. Let's start the session. Yeah, no, it's visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yeah. Okay, today's topic is sampling methods in quantitative and qualitative research. Before beginning to the topic, I just want to give some few examples about that sampling. Sampling, in the sense, we're just going to collect a few parts from the entire population. For example, if we just want to prepare something, otherwise, if we just want to do something in the sense, we want to collect something from that entire population, in the sense, we have to take some few part from the entire population as a sampling. For example, if you want to check your hemoglobin. So in human being, we have 5 to 6 liters of blood. So based on that, we're just going to take 5 ml of blood as a sample. So this is the basic example for eliminating sample, right? So let's see the outline of this session. Sampling definition, purpose of sampling, stages in selection of a sampling, and types of sampling in quantitative research, and types of sampling in qualitative research, and ethical consideration in the data collection. So sampling is the process of selecting number of individual for a study in such a way that individual represent a large group from which they were selected. So from the entire population, we want to take particular topic. So as a respondent, in the sense, we have to take few sample from that, right? So if we just want to taste a tea, if we preparing tea, in the sense, we just want to check the sample of the tea, in the sense, we just take a few portion of the tea, and we just taste it. So while tasting only, we just come to know either that entire thing, this is like an example only, that entire whole population will be the entire thing will be in right way or no, right? So this is sampling. Next is sampling. So entire population, we're studying the entire population. So if we just selected one particular topic, so if we want to study about the IT employees perception, otherwise IT employees job satisfaction, otherwise IT employees job retention. In the sense, our respondent will be, the researcher respondent will be the IT employee. So there will be entire population in that IT employee. We have more than, in Chennai city, more than 5 or 6 in that city basis, there was 5 or 6 IT companies. So we're just going to select randomly as a few part of that entire population for the research study. So that taking that few part of the population, that is, we call it as sampling. So our target population will be the IT employee. This is just as an example. And sampling is a smaller but hopefully representative and collections of unit from population used to determine the truth about element or Either you'll be containing the element in the population. From that entire population, we're just going to collect some few, that is sample. So population in the sense, what do you mean by that population in the sense? That entire study we just going to take, which that researcher going to prefer that particular field, that entire population we have to make that analysis. How about the population size? So the population size in the sense, how many number of employees working in certain field. Either if we taking IT sector, otherwise if we taking medicine, medical field in the sense that entire population, maybe some 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs, maybe a 10 lakhs. From that entire population, we just going to take only minimum 500 or 600 respondent as a sample. So that entire 10 lakhs or entire the 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs, the entire population, that we called it as a population for our study. So target population. So target population is it. So what field we just going to study. So on what particular basis. So the target entire population, that big circle, no, that big circle is that entire population. That entire population, it may be a 10 lakhs or a 20 lakhs. Otherwise, we want to study one particular industry, manufacturing industry in the sense in that particular industry, there will be the target population around 5 lakhs. So from that 5 lakhs, we have to scrutinize as a source population. So for ever study, for that researcher just going to take not that entire 5 lakhs, they're just going to take nearly 500 based on certain criteria of sampling methods. The purpose of sampling, that purpose of sampling is to gather the data about the population in order to make an inference that can be generalized to the population. So the entire populations from, we're just going to take certain portion for as a sample. These are the stages in selection of sample. So first we have to define the target population. Based on the researcher topic only, we can identify that population. So if the person just going to take a consumer satisfaction is a topic in the sense, their population will be the consumer. It comes under that marketing field. So if they just want to take a sample as a population as IT employees in the sense, that maybe like a HR, they want to specify, narrow down the area which field they're just going to take for their research. So first that they want to target their population. Who will be their population? So depends upon that individual topic. The researcher have to select their targeted population and selecting a sampling frame. So what basis they just going to take that research? How about the sampling method? On what sampling method they just want to take that, go with that research. So that is sampling frame. So determine if probability or non-probability. So sampling in the sense we have two methods. One is
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry for the interruption. You haven't changed the screen, ma'am. Like the slide.
okay. Let me check. So what screen now is visible? Which slide?
It's in the first screen, ma'am.
First screen. Okay. I think some issue in my lab. Let me check.
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Now it's visible.
No, ma'am, not yet.
Slide not changed, otherwise slide is not visible. Ma'am, are you there? Slide is not changed.
Ma'am, even now the slide is not here. I mean, you haven't shared it yet. Yeah, it is. Yes, ma'am.
Now it's changed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, then I will just do it this way. If I
Yeah.
share the full screen in the sense, it's not shown.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So the sampling, selection, stages in selection of sample. So there is two method in selection of sample. One is probability or non-probability. In sampling method, we have to, that researcher have to select whether we just going to do the probability sampling, otherwise non-probability sampling. So and next stage is plan procedure for selecting sampling unit. So which unit they just going to select. So it depends upon the research topic only, depends on researcher have to decide that, right? And determine the sample size. Then what about that area? What about the sample size? So they have certain criteria for selecting the sample. This will be we just seen in upcoming slide. And select the actual sample unit. Actual sample unit is that particular field. If the person doing research in human resource, in the sense that it must be have that certain part of sampling method. So they have to go with that. So if they have doing research in marketing, in the sense that will be differ. So it depends upon the topic will be that sampling will be, actual sampling will be selected. And at the end they have to conduct the field work. Once they got the entire sample design, in the sense they can go for field work. And quantitative sampling. So the purpose of the quantitative sampling is to identify the participant from whom to seek some information. And the issue of that quantitative sampling, in the sense, depends upon the nature of sample. Either that researcher has selected the random sampling and they have to decide the size of that sampling, as well as they have to select which method they just going to take, either random sampling method, otherwise non-random sampling method. In quantitative sampling, that they have certain issues as well as sampling error is there. So in the case of quantitative sampling, they have certain issues. First one is like representation, the extent to which sample is representation of that entire population. So first they have to generalize the extent which result of the study can be reasonably extended from the sample from the entire population. And in the quantitative sampling will be they have sampling error in the sense, so if that respondent is more, in the sense that sampling error will be minimum less. If that respondent is small size, in the sense that error will be more. So this is the concept of that sampling error. For example, that minimum sampling is 30. Minimum they have to take a 30 respondent for the study, and maximum 500 or plus. So there should be minimum 30 respondent. If there was error in within the 30 respondent, in the sense that will be shown in some huge way. But if there is sampling error in from that 500 or plus 500 respondent, in the sense that sampling error will be less. So more number of respondent, in the sense there will be less error. If there is more less number of respondent, in the sense their error will be more. So depends upon the researchers which topic they have selected. And quantitative sampling, some important issues like sampling bias and some important aspects of the researcher, and they have to design the create the whatever that bias they just faced during the data collection. So during the step they have three processes in sampling, quantitative sampling. So first one is identify the population and define the sample size and select the sample. First they have to identify the population. The population in the sense that entire studies, how much population in their study. So population in the sense, for example, IT concern, they have more than 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs people working in IT. If our study of, if our research is in specified with IT industry, so if our research is specified in the field of IT industries, in the sense, we have to take data about that entire Chennai city populations of IT professional. So nearly they may be at 10 lakhs or 9 lakhs or 10 plus lakhs. That entire population of the people who are working in IT, that we call it as a population. So that is we just going to identify the population. And next one is we have to identify the sample size. From that entire 10 lakhs, we just going to approach, otherwise we just going to collect the data from either 500 or 600, some nearly more than that 500 data should be gathered from there. From that, we have to select, narrow down that which is apt for our study, that sample which will be more relevant. So if they have 500 respondent, in the sense based on that 500, we just going to take a data collection. If there was any error with that questionnaire, in the sense that questionnaire will be rejected. So after that remaining questionnaire, that may be a 400 plus or 300 plus, that will be a at end that sample size. That only we just going to take a sample. And types of sampling in quantitative research: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So in the qualitative research, they have two types. One is probability, another one is non-probability. So probability, in the sense, there is no certain norms, regulation, otherwise there is no need to follow certain criteria. So randomly we can select our sample, that is probability sampling. In the case of non-probability, it was exact opposite to probability sampling, that is non-probability. So in probability sampling, there is only randomly we just going to select the sample, but in the case of non-probability, they have certain criteria to select a sample. So while selecting probability sampling, they have four techniques. So first one is random sampling. So random sampling, in this is we just going to randomly select a sample. For example, if class teacher entered into class, in the class there was 80 students. So in the class there were nearly 80 students. Within that 80 students, just randomly the class teacher raised question from the front row, back row, middle row, side row. So just randomly just putting that question, okay, for that student. So that we call it as a random sample, right? And next one is stratified random sampling. So stratified random sampling, in the sense that given population, they're just going to divide as a group. That dividing, in the sense that we called it as a strata. That stratified random sampling, we're just going to take a sample based on certain division. That division we called it as strata. So according that criteria, so they can select a sample from based on the geographical location, based on their age, based on their income, based on some strata they have to follow. Strata, in the sense, they have to do some partial way of selecting their sample. For example, they just want to get data of State Bank of India. They want to know the customer satisfactions of State Bank of India. So they once they just want to get data from State Bank of India, in the sense they have to get, they can divide the population into north zone, south zone, east zone, and west zone. Based on that zone, they're just going to target one particular zone. For example, they're just going to target only north zone of State Bank of India, in the sense their respondent only belong to the north zone. So like that, they just want to narrow down, as well as they want to specify the particular stratified random sampling, that we call it as strata. So, like a client, this is some example of that stratified random sampling. So they have to divide as a group based on their gender, otherwise based on their education qualification, based on their age group. They have to define their randomly they can select a sampling, that we call it as stratified random sampling. And next one is cluster sampling. So in this sampling, this process is randomly selecting the intact group, not about that individual, with a defined population, they sharing similar characteristics. So that we call it as a cluster sampling. In the cluster, there are certain locations which interact a group of members of that population can be found. Example like a neighborhood, school district, school or classroom. So they want to narrow down if any for example, if they just want to take uh, the topic may be like higher education quality in India. So if that researcher want to study about the quality of higher education in India. So this will be very huge topic. So we have to narrow down that. So that if we cannot study entire country's higher education quality, so we have to narrow down that. So they just want to specifically, we just going to select only the Tamil Nadu with the reference, special reference to Tamil Nadu, or special reference to certain district. So they just want to make a particular group while taken as a sample. This is cluster sample. That cluster sample that have the populations of three way. The population can be the cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 2. What are the group they just going to select? So based on the group 1 or group 2, that we called it as a cluster. So cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 2. So from that each three cluster, from each one cluster, they have to take the sample as a population. And next one is systematic sampling. So this is also one of the random sampling method. So systematic sampling, in the sense they have to follow certain norms, like they have to follow certain procedure to select their sample. For example, they have certain formula like number of sample divided by entire population. So for example, our sample is 100. Our sample is 100 in the sense we just want only 10 sample with that 100. Our population size is 100. We just going to take only 10 from that entire population. That 10 is sample. So we have to take 10 divided by 100, in the sense we will get 10. So we just going to take every 10th of the as a sample. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That 10 as a sample. Another 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So every 10th, like a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. So this will be the sampling. This is called it as systematic sampling. We're just going to select our sample in certain way. Okay, that is systematic sampling. So every 10, so otherwise we can take like a odd number is our sample, otherwise even number is as a sample. So they have certain norms while selecting their sample. So from that entire population, they have certain norms to select their sample. So these are the they can selection that selection process may be like identifying and defining the population, and determine the desired sample size, and obtain a list of population, and determine that k is, in the sense that k is that numbers, that entire number of that population. Either it is 100, in the sense we have to take every 10. If it is our population is 100, we're just going to take only the odd numbers as our sample, otherwise only even number as a sample. So we just have to follow certain systematic way to as a sample. Example size. So according to research method for business 4th edition, in the year 1975, they proposed the rule of thumb determining the sample size, where sample size is less than 30 and less than 500 or appropriate for most research. Minimum size of the sample should be 30% of the entire population. So for as for a researcher, based on their field, which topic they just going to select, so they have to take that entire population size. Entire population like a 5 lakhs, in the sense they have to take a 30% of that 5 lakhs as their sample. So based on that only they have to go with a study. So the size of sample is depends upon a number of factors, and the researcher have to give the statistical information before they can give answer. For example, this information should be very confidential, as well as they must follow the standard deviation and margin error and population size. These are the way to decide about sample size. Types of sampling in quantitative research. So this is comes under the non-random sampling. So random sampling is there is no norms and regulation. Randomly they can select a population. they can select a sample. But in the case of non-probability sampling, that was just opposed to probability sampling. So they have to follow certain regulations for taking the sample. In the non-random, non-probability sampling, they have to use procedure by chance to select a sample and control their sampling bias. In the case of non-random, that is non-probability sampling, that bias will be very minimum level. That data will be more accurate in the case of non-probability sampling. In non-probability sampling, they have actually four types. That last one will be added in last slide. So first one is convenience sampling, second one purposive sampling or judgment, purposive sampling or judgment sampling, and third one quota sampling, and fourth one snowball sampling. So convenience sampling. So convenient sampling in the sense the process of including whoever happened to be available at the time. So for that person, we can take as a sample. For example, if we want to take data, your respondent will be the old people, old age people. So you want to get data from them. So what you will do in the sense, you can just go for part yeah, morning, otherwise evening. Maybe some old age people may go for walk on morning, otherwise evening. So on that time, you can go to that some public place where the people gathered more. You can collect their data. They can collect their sample. So that we call it as a convenience sampling. So there is no restriction in the case of convenience sampling. The sample may be your neighbor, your well-known person. Otherwise, that person may be like we can meet in public place. So like that, the sampling method will be that gathering data. That person will be some way that known person. That we call it as a convenience sampling. So in this case of convenience sampling, we have certain disadvantage. So in the case of disadvantage, in the sense like that dependent variable as well as the independent variable will be impact on that cases. So we that researcher have to identify to rectify that. This is one of the disadvantages of convenience sampling. Next one is purposive sampling. The process whereby the researchers select a sample based on experience or knowledge of the group to be sampled. Otherwise, it's called as a judgment sampling. So, for example, if we want to get data from women entrepreneur, in the sense, our respondent, that questionnaire will be distributed to only the women entrepreneur, not men. In the topic itself, we just narrowed on. Our respondent will be, our entire population will be only women. So we will not use any men for as their respondent. So this we call it as purposive sampling, otherwise judgment. So we just going to take a particular person as their sample. So, for example, if we want to, our study is related with medicine, we're just going to take a data from nursing college, quality of nursing college in the sense, our respondent will be entire respondents, entire population will be nursing college students, not about that other arts and science, otherwise some other colleges. So we have to purposively, we have to select the respondents. Not, it will be not applicable for all entire respondent. It will be applicable only for very purposive, the person who have well experienced in that certain cases as well as well knowledge in that certain area. That person will be, that population will be taken as a sample in the case of purposive sampling. So disadvantage of purposive sampling in the sense like a potential of inaccuracy in the researcher's criteria and a resulting sampling selection. So if the person was well expert in that specified field, in the sense they can give their right data. If it is not in the sense, the data may be wrong. So this is one of the disadvantage. Next one is quota sampling. So quota sampling in the sense, the process whereby the researcher gather data from individual processing identified the characteristics and quota. For example, while admissions of college, so we have certain quotas like ex-serviceman quota and 50% for women, otherwise economically weaker section quota. So we have certain quotas. For example, government recruitment in the sense they have to follow the quota system for recruitment process. So that we call it as a quota sampling. So they must give priority for that particular quotas. So that quotas may be like a ex-servicemen, otherwise a 50 percentage of women, economically weaker section, otherwise at religion-wise, age-wise. They have some criteria in the case of quota sampling that we called it as quota. Disadvantages of quota sampling in the sense like that people will be very few, that respondent will be very less. So they have to identify the respondents that sample, and they have to make use for their study. That will be one disadvantage in the case of quota sampling. And sampling in qualitative research. So researcher in qualitative research selective participants. So while selecting the participants according to their characteristic as well as the knowledge, because that sample is qualitative research. So they require more characteristic as well as the knowledgeable. So in this case, the purpose of the sampling, it is to when the researcher chooses person or site which provides specific knowledge about the topic of the study. So if that person, that respondents, that sample will be very knowledge about the particular topic. If we just going to take a uh, IT employees, otherwise we're just going to take a patient, we're just going to take a patient, diabetic patient in the sense our sample should be the diabetic patient, not all other people. So not about that other BP patient, otherwise some other like a thyroid patient, not about that. We're just going to take only the diabetic patient. So our study is only about, so first before that, the researcher have to be aware about that topic. He must be have to gather more knowledge, that he must have that knowledge to assess either the respondents giving the right data or not. Um, one of the non-random sampling. Under that non-random sampling, there will be the snowball sampling. So snowball sampling, in the sense, it is when you don't know the best people to study because of unfamiliarity of the topic or the complexity of the event. So you ask participants during the interview to suggest other individual to be a sample. So this is like a chain process. Snowballing sampling is like a chain process. So if you got one respondent, for example, you want to study specified about certain mobile. You just want to your study your sample is only consumers who using Apple mobile phone. Your consumer is only Apple mobile phone. So first you will get one sample, one person who just using Apple mobile phone. You just get data from that people, and you just ask that respondent to refer some other person who just using the same mobile. First they must have that it's like a chain process. Snowball sampling in the sense like a chain process. One person who have that familiar, one person is one respondent, they just giving the data in the sense that person have to refer some other person. So based on the chain, so another person in the sense that person have to refer some other person who just using Apple mobile phone. So like that respondent itself, they have, it's like a chain process. They have to refer some other person as a sample. This is called snowball sampling. So this snowball sampling data will be more accurate while comparing with the other sample. In other sample, like the random sampling, probability sampling, in the sense that data we cannot expect that can be 100% accurate. But in the case of snowball sampling, we can expect that data, that sample will be accurate. That accuracy will be more in the case of snowball sampling. For example, if you want to get data about some IT employees, who is well versed in specified coding. Like they may be expert in Python, otherwise they may be expert in some coding like some programming. So first we have to refer that person as a sample and ask that people to refer that person who you know very well in the same program. So they just like continues like a chain process that we called it as a snowball sampling. This comes under non-random sampling. For types of purposeful sampling, they have 7 types. Maximal variation sampling, typical sampling, theory or concept sampling, homogeneous sampling, critical sampling, and opportunistic sampling, and snowball sampling. So maximal variation sampling. So in this case, in this maximum variation sampling, they have to select an individual that differ on certain characteristics. The characteristics of that sample will be not common, that will be differ. So they will not take a sample as a person have the common area or common knowledge. They expect something differ. So if they have the different sample in the sense they can get more knowledge and more depth data from that respondent. So they want to cover all the advantages as well as disadvantages in that particular topic. So in that cases, they will select maximal variation sampling. And typical sampling, in this case, that person will not be unfamiliar. So depends upon that situation, depends upon that demographic data only take, they will just take as a sample. So that person must have the demographic data. Demographic in the sense the personal profile of that respondent. That sample will be the sampling samples demographic data. Maybe they belong to same age group. Otherwise, they may be differed in that income. Otherwise, they may be differed in gender. So they have to select some unfamiliar person with that situation. In case study method, they can use this typical sampling method. And theory or concept sampling. So it is when you select the individual or site because they can help you to generate a theory or a specific concept with their theory. So if we want to select about that one particular topic, so we have to gather more conceptual knowledge of that field. If you want to study about that entrepreneur, first you must gather more conceptual knowledge, theoretical knowledge. On based on that, you're just going to select a sample. So that respondent must have the full-fledged knowledge or full-fledged experience in that particular field. So for that person, we're just going taking as a sample and homogeneous sampling. So in this case, you have to select, the researcher have to select certain site or people because they possess similar characteristic. In this strategy, you need to identify the characteristics and find individual or say that respondent will be that sample will be the same homogeneous. There is no changes. They're just going to target only the age group of 20 to 30. They're just going to target a diabetic patient under the age group of 40 to 50. So they want to take some homogeneous sample and critical sampling. So in this critical sampling, it is when you study the exceptional case that represent the central phenomena in the dramatic term, that cases will be very critical. While getting data itself, it will be very difficult to collect that sample. So that types of maybe that topic, otherwise that data will be very uh, tough to get. The data will be very tough to collect. So that case, we can use the critical sampling. For example, if you want to take your sample will be the COVID affected person. So the data will be available, but it will be very risk as well as very tough to get information. So we cannot get the entire people data of COVID positive patients. So no one will give that. If you go for that medical uh, refer any other person in that medical profession, since no one will give that. So some data will be very confidential, we cannot get, but we have to use for our study. That we call it as a critical sampling. And opportunity sampling, it is used after the data collection began, when you find that you need to collect a new information to answer a research question. So while data collection itself, some respondent may give their own suggestion. So based on that, we can add some other variable in our study. That will be some opportunity to gather some information beyond our study. If we talk, otherwise, if you have the direct talk with the respondents, in the sense we can get this opportunities to sample. And snowball already we saw. Anyway, I just give one more example for snowball sampling. Um, in the case of snowball sampling, that data will be referred to by another respondent. That like a chain role, that data will be, that sample will be given from your respondent itself. No other person will give. So uh, if you want to get data of during that lockdown, no IT company was uh, or work from home process was taken in the case in IT companies. So during that time, you want to collect data from your IT employee. So what you can do in the sense, you can refer one person in IT company, one employee as a data. So that person will refer. Otherwise, that person can add their uh, researcher in their WhatsApp group, that IT employees group, and they can give more data. They can get more data. Otherwise, they can refer some other IT employees. So it's like a chain process. The respondents have certain relationship in the case of snowball sampling. And ethical consideration in the data collection. So while if our data is factual, it will be very trust. Our data is honest in the sense that research will be give 100% result. Our finding and suggestion and conclusion will be in 100% perfect. So it is a researcher ethical responsibility to safeguard the storyteller by maintaining and understanding the purpose of research, as well as that relationship should be based on the trust between the researcher and the respondent. So they must have the trust. If the researcher going to get data from a particular respondent, in the sense first that researcher must have the trust on that respondent. They will give the factual data. So for that cases only, we have to follow this. We call it as ethical consideration. We have to follow some ethics during our research. So inform the participants of purpose of the study. Before we collecting the data, we have to individually we have to meet that respondent and we have to explain about our topic and explain about our study and ask them to give the proper data, right and factual data. If this happened in all research, in the sense they will be very, that thesis will be very effective. If it is paper, in the sense that article will be very effective. So in the case of qualitative researcher, they must be aware of potential for own emotional testimonials on processing this information, and during that interview process, participants may disclose the sensitive and potential distressing information in the course of interview. So while we uh, meet our respondents, so whether it may be like a survey method, otherwise interview method, whatever that method they just used for to get the data. So they must have that good relationship, that few minutes, either it's take a 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get the data. First, they must discuss about the topic. They just have to state the overview of topic and they have to get the data. Then only that research will be in ethical way. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Participants, you can raise your questions. Participants, is there anyone who have a question? I hope there is no questions.
Actually, I expect more questions from the
Sure, ma'am. Yeah,
because
there is
there
a
was, I
question.
think, many of them researcher. This is national webinar, so I expect more questions. That's why I just finished before 10 minutes for this discussion. Are participants anyone interested? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, participants, for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Participants, I hope there is no question. So it is time for the vote of thanks. So it's my pleasure to do the vote of thanks for the day. To begin with, I thank the Almighty for the blessings throughout the day. My heartfelt thanks to our speaker, Dr. N. Tilakavati, Assistant Professor, PG Department of BCom, Bank Management, TG Vaishnav College, for accepting our invitation and made the session a beneficial one. Once again, I thank you, ma'am. I thank our principal, Dr. R. Rupin, and our administrator, Reverend Sister A. Malarjoti, for their encouragement and support. My heartfelt thanks to all the participants and SJC fraternities for your presence and cooperation. My sincere thanks to the Department of Visual Communication and Mr. Harish for their technical support. Last but not the least, I thank my committee members for giving me an opportunity to thank everyone in this occasion. Once again, my heartfelt thanks to everyone. See you all tomorrow. Just a moment. Just a moment. Ma'am, there is a question from Vidya P.
Yeah.
Uh, it seems they need more details about regression part.
Regressions come under the analysis part. So analysis like a SPSS. So I think you have that SPSS session is it in this webinar this Friday. So
They had
regression
yesterday. Yeah, they had yesterday.
yesterday. Okay, okay. This is SPSS part. The sampling. This is we're just going to depth knowledge about the respondents in that research from the data or population. Regression is completely about that analysis. So how we can use regression in the sense we can select the researcher have to select the entire data and they have to make association between the variables. Either they can take a demographic variable with a dependent variable, otherwise they can get a dependent and independent variable to get the regression. So it's a part of SPSS analysis chapter. I think it's take one more webinar to handle that session. It's like a huge topic, regression. It comes under the SPSS analysis part. Regression, only thing we're just going to find the association between the dependent as well as independent variable. So for example, we want to get data, that data entire population, we're just comparing the women employee satisfaction level as well as comparing male employee satisfaction work level. So like that, we're just going to compare. While comparing, we have to use that SPSS software to get the regression. Yes, any more question? It's SPSS part.
Thank you, ma'am. I
Thank
hope
you.
she got cleared about this. Is there anyone else who would? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Actually, I want to thank principal correspondents and organizing committee for giving this opportunity. Once again, I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Participants, please do fill your feedback form for day 2. It is there in the chat box. Kindly fill the feedback. I would like to turn your camera on for a group photo. Ma'am, I want everyone to turn your camera on.
Thank you.
Thank you
Feedback
all.
link has been posted in the chat box. Please fill the feedback. Participants, please fill the feedback which is available in the chat box.
Thank you all. Thank you. You can turn your camera off. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.